And for more analysis, joining us live now is the former Chief of Army and current Director of the National Security Institute at the University of Canberra, Peter Leahy, who's also the Chairman of the Soldier on Veteran Support Group. Peter, appreciate your time as always. Firstly, what do you make of the scenes we're seeing in Kabul right now? It seems like a chaotic situation, but was it really inevitable, as the US President is suggesting?
Well, I think the word that I've just heard used on your clip there was heartbreaking, and indeed it is heartbreaking for the people trying to get out, but let's also have some sympathy for the troops from the various nations and our own soldiers, sailors and aviators who have gone there. They're in harm's way again, and they're going to have to perform a very, very hard task. That is, in some ways, select who gets on those planes and who comes back to safety. So let's think of them as they're going through this task. It's, I guess it's an emerging new day over there in the morning, and things will be starting to happen there. But it's difficult to do these sorts of things, and the troops are trained. We've had some experience over the years, evacuations at, well, all the way back to Vietnam, but also Lebanon, Phnom Penh, and various other places. So they'll know what to do. They'll be compassionate, and they'll try and help as many people as they can. But what I'm seeing is that we're only ever going to control the airport, and that might be episodic. The Taliban might let people in, they might not let them in. It's just a really hard situation to be in. It could last a few days, maybe it'll last a whole lot longer. I hope it does, and I hope that the Taliban do get some control so that people who are authorised can get to the airport and we can get them out to safety. But I think we're going to see more of these heartbreaking circumstances over the next few days and maybe weeks.
Are you disappointed Australia hasn't committed to taking more than 3,000 people trying to flee Afghanistan? Do we owe them more than that?
I think we owe a moral responsibility to get as many out as we can. I think the numbers will probably vacillate. I think if time goes through and more people appear and they're authorised to come out, hopefully we can get them out in these sort of moderated circumstances. But I want to leave the numbers to the government. I think the task right at the moment out is to get people out. And clearly with a plane with 26 on it yesterday, that's pretty hard because the Hercules will take a lot more than that. So let's get the planes in, get as many people out as we can, and then assess the need and adjust if we need to.
Peter, I know you've studied the Taliban closely. Is it naive to have any trust in them when they say that they've reformed, they'll respect women, they'll treat people who worked for the Allied forces well?
Well, we've got to wait to see what they do, but I've got a real degree of scepticism about this. If some of the comments we're hearing that women can have rights under Islam, we've already heard some people say that if there's a thief, he'll have his hand cut off. If there's an adulteress, they'll be stoned. These blokes have got form. We've seen it before. What we're seeing at the moment, I think, is a very sophisticated public relations campaign. I think we've been fooled at the peace treaty down in Doha. They're going to be very careful. We're only seeing a snapshot that those brave journalists are in there, in and around Kabul. I've been hearing some comments from people who are talking to those who might be in Jalalabad or perhaps up at Tarankot, around out in the countryside, as they're trying to get their families out. They're hearing some pretty disturbing things. So I'm not going to be surprised at all if they revert to the ways that we saw when we first went there in 2000.
Peter, why did the world seemingly underestimate the speed at which the Taliban would take Kabul? Is that clear to you?
No, it's not. It's clear to me that there was an intelligence failure. It's clear to me that they moved so quickly from the countryside into the cities. I think it's been a very sophisticated campaign. When I think from a military point of view, I think of combat power, firepower, manoeuvre and morale. And if I can give that equation to the Iraqi National Security Forces, well, they've failed absolutely on morale, much like we saw when ISIS moved its way through in Iraq. And I would say what we've got there, we overestimated the ability of the Afghan government to have legitimacy, that is to have the people trust them. So the military have shown no loyalty, they've shown no fighting spirit, and that's what disturbs me in large part because we spent a lot of time at the last decade training these people and they've delivered nothing to us.
And what is your message to veterans? I know it's been a really difficult week for a lot of our veterans who are questioning if their efforts in that country were in vain.
Well, we've heard the Governor-General this afternoon come out and speak, and that's terrific that he's done that. My message to veterans is that you perform professionally, you perform well, you've done all we asked of you. You should be proud of your service to the nation. And people have asked, was it worth it? And I heard the Prime Minister say the other day, it wasn't in vain. Well, my view of that is it won't be in vain if we learn the lessons. And the lessons are, let's be careful about what we get into. It was fine to go to Afghanistan to get rid of Al-Qaeda, to try and get Osama bin Laden, to deny it as a base for operations. But then we left and went to Iraq. We essentially forgot about Afghanistan. There was, in fact, from about 2003 until 2005, there was one Army Lieutenant Colonel in the country working with the UN. Then Iraq went sour and we went back, and frankly, we went back without a strategy. And we sort of muddled our way into a nation-building campaign without a strategy, without a clear mission, without any sense of what the end state was, what victory looked like, what peace looked like indeed. And I think that's the lesson we have to learn at the strategic and political level. If we're going to go into these campaigns, let's decide what we're going to do. And as I've heard some people say, the strategy towards the end in Afghanistan was not to lose. Well, that's useless. We went in with a bit of a strategy and then we just set it and forgot about it, got on with other ideas. If we've got troops deployed overseas, we've got to recognise they're at war and they should be the real focus of our strategic and political attention and policies.
Well said. Peter Leahy, appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.